Hi everybody. So if you turned in your Chapter 7 toolkit on time, I provided some feedback on your work and just kind of taking a look at your thesis, your main points, and your use of concrete evidence mostly. You can take a look at the rubric and kind of see where you stand on that. If you scored in the top two categories on the rubric, you're fine or close to fine. If you scored in the bottom two categories, you may want to consider getting extra help from a tutor on the specific aspects of your essay. But let's take a look at a few of the things that are in this toolkit here, just some things that I want y'all to think about as you're revising. So, one, the thesis. Of course, we want to make sure that our thesis has some kind of interesting, debatable point about our topic, not just tell me what it's about or what genre it belongs to, but something that's an interesting and debatable point. So, in this example about the Hunger Games, it talks about how the argument is that the Hunger Games popularized the dystopian young adult fiction genre. It's really the standard bearer for it. It's the one that kind of establishes the criteria of the genre, is the argument that they're making here. But I do just want to mention a couple of things in this example. So you see how they have here as an example of the young adult dystopian genre. And I know a lot of y'all did that when you did your own portion of the toolkit. Consider varying your language in your thesis just a little bit so that I'm not reading, every single essay starting with a thesis like that. So consider varying the language a little bit so that you're not kind of repeating the same thing that's in the example. And then another thing that I want to mention as far as when it comes to a thesis statement, um, popularized the genre because of Katniss's portrayal as a heroine, the development of the theme of government control and the events that resonate in today's world. So that's what we call a 3 point thesis statement. It's probably something that you were taught in middle school or high school. As you get into college writing, it's a good idea to try to move away from that just a little bit. I really need to modify these toolkits to where it doesn't really push y'all towards doing a 3 point thesis. But again, that's something to consider revising as you make your final revisions ahead of the end of the unit. Is maybe try to rephrase your thesis so that you're not doing the 3 point thesis statement, because that's sort of an announcing kind of thing. These are going to be my three main points kind of thing. It's great for drafting. It's great as you're learning, but as you move toward a more advanced level of writing, you want to try to use your own writing voice and use your own language, and a varied language, and not just copy what is in the example. So some things to think about as you make your revisions. It's not wrong per se, but it's definitely not um, a high level of college writing to be doing those things, is what I should say. When it comes to the main points here in this next section, so main points, remember your main points should directly support the thesis if you want to think of it in that kind of training wheels sort of way. My thesis is true because reason one, reason two, reason three, reason four. So make sure that your supporting points are also kind of debatable points, points of analysis. With the explanations and examples, very, very important to think about for everyone. I want you to use concrete, specific examples from your primary source. So that's an episode or two of the TV series that you're analyzing, or from the movie, or from the podcast, or whatever. You want to go back and actually watch, listen, read, whatever, to find some of those concrete, specific examples. Some quoting is going to be necessary to illustrate some of your points. So really show me in your final draft that you looked at this closely yourself and pulled specific concrete examples to illustrate your points. You're not just going off of what you remember about it or what you read about it. That kind of gets me to the last part here with the secondary source evidence. This essay should be mostly your perspective, what you think about this topic, using your sources to either back up a point, ideally to provide some background and context, maybe, but most of the essay should be what you notice or what you want to show your audience from a close look at your primary source. So don't over rely on secondary sources. I don't want to just read a summary of secondary sources as your argument. Show me things that come from you. All right. So I will go ahead and make this brief and cut it off here, but just some things to think about as you make your final revisions, and some things to possibly either talk with the tutor about if you still need to see a tutor, or go back to a tutor and get some additional help with.